A class of JCU cinema students had a special treat last week when they received a visit from famed movie critic David Stratton of the long-running television program At the Movies. David was in our city as a guest of the Townsville Cinema Group to present a film night as part of the group's 50th anniversary celebrations. After hopping off the plane, he popped into the tutorial for the CN 2012 cinema class, The Land and Its Legends in Australian Cinema. In the tutorial, the class were discussing the film they had watched the previous night, the little-known classic Australian thriller Wake in Fright. David shared his extensive knowledge of the film with the students, explaining the background of its production and its place in Australian cinema history, an industry which at the time was not yet in existence.
Australians were beginning to demand more Australian content on television, and at the same time there was a growing feeling that there should be an Australian film industry. But in 1971, when Wake in Fright was made, that hadn't yet happened. That was about to happen in the next few years, that government funding for Australian films was about to take place.
Having been present at the film's premiere, he was also able to add some insight into the impact the film had on audiences of the time.
I went to the first preview in Sydney. It was an amazing experience because people, I'd read the book, so I knew more or less what to expect, and the guy who edited the film was a friend of mine, so again I knew what I'd heard stories. I can tell you the preview audience was totally shocked. They hadn't expected anything like as graphic as this, or as anything like this depiction of Australia. It was not a box office success. And I guess, again, you can understand why, because I think audiences at the time, and probably even still today, find it too much.
Conversation then moved on to questions from students and interested guests, who included JCU cinema lecturers Dr. Alison Craven and Dr. Chris Mann, and President of the Townsville Cinema Group, Bill White. David then shared with the class a few anecdotes from a lifetime spent in the industry, including a story about the time he had to interview a young up-and-coming director without actually having seen his film.
The publicist said, look, there's this young American director, he's just made his first film, it's being shown in one of the sections, not the main section, but one of the side sections of the festival, and he's very keen to do interviews, so would you do? So I said, sure. I said, well, where's the interview to be? And they said, well, we don't have the budget to get a hotel room or something like that. So do you mind if we actually just do it squatting on the beach? And I said, no, I don't. So anyway, that was like the day before the festival begins. So we go through the festival, and towards the day I've got in my diary, meeting this guy, what's his name? Anyway, whatever his name is. Then something terrible happens. I can't get to see the film because there's conflicting screenings and interviews and so on and so on. And I said, oh my God, I've got to talk to this guy and I haven't seen this film, what am I going to do? So I spoke to a friend and said, did you see this film? He said, oh yes, I saw it. I said, well, what do you think? I don't know. So I said, well, what question should I ask this guy? He said, well, maybe just say this. So, okay. So we get there. So this guy, so we squat down on the beach. And I said, well, okay, so what about this? So 20 minutes later, he's still talking. And that was Quentin Tarantino, of course.
After over an hour of entertaining the class with his wealth of anecdotes and stories, it was time for the tutorial to come to a close, with everyone having enjoyed their time in the presence of an icon of the Australian film industry.
Just wanted to ask everyone to join me in thanking you, David.
Thank you.